My MIL humiliated me over my kid's DNA. Then my husband revealed the truth she hid her whole life. Yeah, that blew up in her face real quick. I should have known the day was going to go sideways the moment. The grocery store ran out of the cheap dinosaur candles, and I had to buy the fancy ones that look like they belong on a wedding cake instead of a 6-year-old's sugar-fueled chaos festival. That's how life works, apparently. You plan a wholesome little birthday party. You buy the organic juice boxes because some mom on Facebook scared you into thinking red dye is basically meth for children. And then boom, emotional warfare breaks out between the potato salad and the piñata. Classic. And honestly, if anyone ever writes a handbook on how to ruin a perfectly normal afternoon, my mother-in-law deserves her own chapter, maybe a whole section. Bold font, underlined with warning labels, because this woman has been allergic to me since day one. Like I showed up in her living room, wearing a hazmat suit made of red flags and bad decisions. Never mind that I was just a 20-something girl who fell in love with her son and accidentally got pregnant before we had time to pretend we were responsible adults. Apparently that alone put me on her personal blacklist forever. Like I personally invented premarital sex and then mailed her a memo about it. And look, I get it. I really do. Nobody dreams about their only son getting married in a hurry because his girlfriend peed on a stick and the stick said, "Surprise, congratulations. Your life is about to become a permanent episode of Survivor Parenting Edition." That wasn't exactly my Pinterest vision board either, but life doesn't come with a rehearsal dinner. It just kicks the door open and starts rearranging the furniture. So we got married fast, small wedding, cheap flowers, a cake that leaned slightly to the left like it had political opinions. We were broke, terrified, and weirdly happy, which is basically the starter pack for young marriage. And we stayed happy. That's the part she never forgave, because nothing irritates a bitter person more than watching the people they predicted would fail keep succeeding out of sheer stubbornness. 6 years later, here we were, 2 kids, mortgage, laundry piles that reproduce overnight like gremlins, the whole suburban circus. And somehow she still looked at me like I was a temporary inconvenience instead of the woman raising her grandchildren and keeping her son alive with regular meals and reminders to drink water. Not that she cared much about the grandchildren anyway, which, if I'm being brutally honest, was kind of a blessing. Because some grandparents show up with cookies and hugs and unconditional love, and others show up with passive-aggressive comments and the emotional warmth of a tax audit. She fell squarely into category 2. The kids barely noticed her absence, and I didn't have to fake smiles while she inspected my housekeeping, like she was grading a final exam, so our arrangement worked. She stayed in her lane, we stayed in ours. Everybody survived. Until the birthday party. God, that party. I can still smell the frosting. The house was loud in that chaotic, sticky-fingered way that makes you question your life choices, but also melts your heart a little. Kids running in circles, balloons squeaking against the ceiling, someone's toddler crying because another child looked at him wrong. Pure domestic mayhem, the soundtrack of parenthood. I was moving around the kitchen like a caffeinated octopus, wiping counters, refilling snack bowls, pretending I had everything under control, while internally calculating how many hours of sleep I'd get if I collapsed face first onto the couch right then, which for the record would have been 0, because mothers don't sleep. We just temporarily shut down like old laptops. And then she walked in, late of course, always late, not in a dramatic entranceway, more like a slow, deliberate glide, as if she expected background music to start playing. When she crossed the threshold, dressed too nicely for a children's party, wearing that same tight smile she reserves for situations, where she's pretending to be pleasant but secretly judging the wallpaper. I felt my shoulders tense immediately. Muscle memory, like my body recognized a storm cloud, before my brain had time to process it. I told myself to relax. It's just a party, just a few hours. You can survive anything for a few hours. That's basically motherhood's unofficial motto. So I kept moving, cutting cake slices, passing out juice boxes, smiling so hard my cheeks started cramping. Meanwhile, she hovered near the adults, sipping her drink like she was auditioning for a role in a soap opera titled Disappointed Mother of the Year. And at first everything was normal, too normal, which should have been my second warning sign, because silence from that woman is never peace. It's suspense, the calm before the passive-aggressive hurricane. Eventually the conversation drifted toward parenting, like it always does, when a bunch of adults are trapped in a room with screaming children and sticky floors. People started sharing stories about bedtime routines and picky eaters and the weird emotional roller coaster of raising tiny humans who can't find their shoes, but somehow know how to unlock your phone and order toys online. You know, wholesome stuff, harmless stuff. And that's when she decided to open her mouth. Not loudly, not dramatically, just casually. Like she was commenting on the weather. She started talking about how she'd always struggled to connect with children, how she never really felt that warm, fuzzy bond people always gush about, how parenting had been difficult, which, okay, fine, people have different experiences. Not everyone is a natural caregiver. Some folks just survive parenthood instead of thriving in it. I can respect honesty. I really can. But then she kept going, and going, and going, like a car rolling downhill after the brakes fail. She started circling the topic of resemblance, genetics, family traits, the way children are supposed to look like their parents. Her voice stayed calm, almost thoughtful, but there was this sharp edge underneath, like broken glass hiding in a bowl of candy, and I felt it. That prickling sensation at the back of my neck, the instinct that tells you something ugly is about to happen. So I stopped moving, just stood there with a plastic knife in my hand and frosting on my fingers, listening, because sometimes the best way to handle a snake is to let it finish uncoiling. She talked about my son first, how he didn't resemble her son as much as she expected, which was objectively ridiculous, considering my kid is basically a miniature copy-paste version of his father. Same eyes, same grin. son. Same stubborn streak that makes him refuse to wear socks, even when it's freezing outside. The resemblance is so obvious strangers comment on it in grocery store lines, but she kept insisting. Calmly, methodically, like she was building a case in court. Then she mentioned my daughter, said the resemblance there was even weaker. And that's when the room started to feel smaller, hotter, like the air had thickened into syrup. Because suddenly it wasn't just an observation anymore. It was an accusation. A slow, creeping implication slithering across the floor toward the center of the room. I felt anger rising in my chest, sharp and electric. The kind that makes your hands shake and your vision narrow. But I stayed quiet, stayed still, let her keep talking. Because deep down, I wanted to hear exactly how far she was willing to go. Turns out very far. Far enough to suggest, without saying it, outright, that my children might not belong to her son. Yeah, that happened. At my kid's birthday party. Between the cupcakes and the party hats. I remember the exact moment the words landed. It felt like someone punched me straight in the sternum. Not physically painful, just emotionally violent. A shockwave of disbelief followed by this roaring, volcanic rage that bubbled up from somewhere deep in my gut. My brain started firing off thoughts, faster than I could process them. Did she really just say that? Is this woman insane? Should I throw her out? Should I flip the table? Should I pretend I misheard? Nope, definitely heard it. Oh my god, I'm about to commit a felony in front of a bounce house. I was seconds away from exploding, like full nuclear meltdown. But then something unexpected happened. My husband laughed, not a polite chuckle, not nervous laughter, a real genuine burst of amusement that cut through the tension like a chainsaw through plywood. And for a split second, I thought he'd lost his mind. Because who laughs when their mother accuses their wife of cheating and questions the legitimacy of their children? Apparently a man who's been carrying a secret heavy enough to break bones. He kept laughing, and the sound was strange, not joyful, not cruel, just exhausted, like someone finally dropping a weight they'd been holding for years. That's when I noticed her face, the color draining out of it, the way her eyes widened just slightly, like she suddenly realized she'd stepped onto thin ice. And something inside me shifted, because in that moment I knew. I didn't know what exactly, but I knew the ground was about to crack open. My husband straightened his shoulders, took a slow breath. The laughter faded into silence, leaving behind this heavy, suffocating stillness that settled over the room like dust after an explosion. And then he unleashed the truth, not gently, not quietly, but with the calm, brutal precision of someone who's been waiting a very long time to speak. The words fell one after another, each one heavier than the last, and I watched the entire room transform into a live-action train wreck. Faces froze, eyes darted, mouths hung open in stunned disbelief. Meanwhile, my brain scrambled to keep up. Affair, business partner, paternity, secret letter, years of silence, years. I felt like the floor tilted beneath my feet, because suddenly the narrative flipped. The accusation boomeranged. The hypocrisy landed squarely in the center of the room like a grenade. And the woman who had spent years judging me, criticizing me, questioning my worth as a wife and mother, she stood there exposed, trembling, caught in the spotlight of her own past. It was surreal, messy, devastating, and weirdly satisfying in the most toxic, petty corner of my soul. Not proud of that, but hey, honesty is cheaper than therapy. She started crying eventually. Loud, dramatic sobs that echoed off the walls. The kind of crying that feels less like sadness and more like damage control. Words tumbled out of her mouth, frantic and defensive, but none of them stuck. The truth had already taken root. And just like that, the party was over. Guests slipped out one by one, awkward and uncomfortable, clutching their coats and avoiding eye contact like they'd accidentally witnessed a crime scene. The balloons sagged, the cake sat untouched. The whole house felt hollow, drained of energy. Meanwhile, I stood there in the middle of the wreckage, holding a paper plate smeared with frosting, trying to process what the hell had just happened. Because one minute we were celebrating a birthday, and the next minute a decades-old family secret detonated in my living room. Life's funny like that. Not haha funny. More like you blink and everything changes funny. And as I looked at my husband, steady, calm, quietly resolute, I realized something that hit harder than any insult his mother had ever thrown at me. This wasn't just a family argument anymore. This was the beginning of a war. And whether I liked it or not, I was already standing on the front line. The house felt weird after everyone left. Not quiet, not peaceful quiet. More like the kind of silence you get after a car crash, when the airbags deflate and there's glass everywhere, and nobody's sure who's bleeding yet. Yeah, that kind of quiet. I stood in the kitchen, staring at the half-eaten cake like it had personally betrayed me. Blue frosting smeared across the counter, sticky fingerprints everywhere. One candle still tilted sideways like it had given up on life halfway through the celebration, which honestly, same. My son was upstairs playing with his new toys, completely oblivious to the emotional nuclear bomb that had detonated downstairs. Kids are resilient like that, or blissfully ignorant, or both. Meanwhile, my baby girl was asleep in her crib, drooling peacefully, living her best milk-drunk life, while the adults downstairs were unraveling like cheap sweaters. Lucky her. I wiped the counter for the third time even though it was already clean, because apparently scrubbing surfaces is my default coping mechanism now. Some people cry, some people scream. I disinfect. Real glamorous stuff. And my brain would not shut up. It just kept replaying the scene, on loop like a highlight. Real from the world's worst reality show. Her face, his laugh, the stunned silence, the emotional whiplash. All of it bouncing around inside my skull like a pinball on Red Bull. Because here's the thing nobody tells you about family drama. The explosion is loud, sure, but the aftermath, that's where the real mess lives. That's when the phone starts ringing, and oh boy did it ring. Not immediately, not that night. That night was just numbness, shock. The why, emotional equivalent of sitting in a dark room after the power goes out, waiting for your eyes to adjust. But the next morning, the flying monkeys arrived, one after another. Calls, messages, missed calls, more messages. Long paragraphs from relatives I barely talked to, suddenly acting like they'd been appointed judges on the Supreme Court of Family Affairs. People who hadn't checked on us in years suddenly had very strong opinions about respect and dignity and tradition. Funny how that works. Nobody shows up when you're drowning, but the second there's drama, everybody grabs popcorn and starts handing out moral advice like free samples at Costco. I read the first message while standing in the laundry room, holding a basket of mismatched socks and existential dread. It said we should apologize for humiliating her. I actually laughed out loud. Loud enough to scare the dog, because apparently in their version of reality, accusing a mother of cheating and questioning her children's legitimacy at a birthday party is just a harmless little oopsie, but exposing the truth about decades of deception is the real crime. Make it make sense. I swear family logic operates in some alternate universe where accountability goes to die. Another message popped up, then another, each one dripping with the same tired narrative. She's your elder. She's been through a lot. You should respect her. Family matters should stay private. And I'm standing there in my laundry room thinking, yeah, maybe she should have thought about privacy before launching a paternity accusation next to a bowl of Doritos. Just a thought. My phone buzzed again. I considered throwing it into the washing machine. Tempting, very tempting, but instead I set it face down on the counter and took a deep breath. The kind you take when you're trying not to scream into a pillow like a deranged raccoon. Because underneath the anger, there was something heavier sitting in my chest. Guilt. Not full-blown guilt, more like a nagging itch in the back of my brain whispering, what if you're being selfish? I hated that voice. Absolutely hated it, because logically I knew we hadn't done anything wrong. My husband didn't start that fire. He just refused to keep standing in the smoke. But emotionally, there was still this tiny part of me worrying about him, about the impossible position he was stuck in. Only child, widowed mother, years of obligation wrapped in guilt and loyalty, and complicated love. That's a heavy load to carry. And I didn't want to be the person who made it heavier, so I waited, watched him, studied his mood like a scientist observing a volatile chemical reaction. At first he seemed calm, too calm, the kind of calm that makes you nervous, because it feels like the surface of a frozen lake. Smooth and quiet, but hiding cracks underneath. He went to work, played with the kids, fixed a leaky faucet, did all the normal, boring, everyday things that make up adult life. But there was a tension in his shoulders I couldn't ignore, a stiffness in his movements, like he was bracing for impact. And honestly, same, because even though the big reveal had already happened, the emotional fallout was still spreading like wildfire. You could feel it in the air. That heavy, electric tension that makes your stomach twist for no reason. Then came the whispers. Extended family members talking behind our backs. Speculating, judging, spinning the story into whatever version made them feel morally superior. Apparently, I was the villain now. The manipulative wife, the homewrecker, the evil mastermind who brainwashed their precious boy into turning against his mother, which is hilarious, considering the only thing I've successfully brainwashed him into doing is rinsing his dishes before putting them in the sink. And even that took 6 years. But logic doesn't matter in family drama. Perception is everything. And once people decide you're the bad guy, they cling to that narrative like it's their emotional security blanket. Meanwhile, I was just trying to survive the day without losing my sanity or my temper, or both. One afternoon, about 3 days after the party, I finally cracked. Not dramatically, not with screaming or tears, just a quiet, exhausted breakdown in the kitchen, while folding tiny baby clothes that looked impossibly small and innocent compared to the chaos swirling around us. Because motherhood doesn't stop for emotional crises. The laundry still piles up, the dishes still need washing, the kids still need snacks every 5 minutes like tiny, adorable food critics with no chill. And there I was, standing in the middle of it all, feeling like I'd aged 10 years in a single week. My brain started spiraling again. What if this never ends? What if the kids grow up watching this mess? What if I'm the reason he loses his family? That last thought hit the hardest. Because no matter how angry I was at his mother, I never wanted to be the wedge that split him from the people who raised him, even if those people were acting like emotional toddlers throwing tantrums in public. Love makes you do weird things, makes you tolerate nonsense, makes you question your own boundaries. It's messy like that. So that night, after the kids were asleep and the house finally settled into that fragile evening calm, I decided to rip the Band-Aid off. No more avoiding the conversation. No more pretending everything was fine. I sat next to him on the couch, heart pounding like I was about to confess to a crime, and let all the thoughts spill out of my mouth. The fears, the anger, the exhaustion, the guilt. Every messy, unfiltered emotion I'd been bottling up since the party. And the whole time my brain kept running commentary in the background. Don't cry. Don't make this about you. Don't screw this up. Spoiler alert, I definitely sounded dramatic. But he listened. Really listened. No defensiveness. No frustration. Just quiet understanding, the kind that makes your chest ache because you realize you're not carrying the burden alone. And when he finally responded, something inside me loosened. Not completely, but enough to breathe again. Because he said what I'd been too afraid to admit. He was already thinking about cutting ties with the relatives who were pressuring us. Already done with the guilt trips. Already tired of the hypocrisy. And hearing that felt like someone opened a window in a suffocating room. Fresh air. Relief. Validation. But then came the hard part. His mother. That was the real dilemma. Because cutting off cousins and aunts and random extended family members is easy. You block a few numbers, skip a few gatherings, and life moves on. But a parent? That's different. That's history. That's identity. That's decades of memories tangled up in obligation and love and complicated emotions. You can't just flip a switch and pretend they never existed. Well, some people can. But my husband isn't wired that way. He's loyal, to a fault sometimes. The kind of man who shows up even when it hurts. The kind who carries responsibility like a badge of honor, even when the weight is crushing him. And that's one of the reasons I fell in love with him. Also one of the reasons this situation was tearing him apart. So we compromised. A middle ground. Boundaries without complete abandonment. She wouldn't be welcome in our home anymore. Not until she apologized. Not until she acknowledged the damage she'd caused. Not until she showed even a shred of accountability. Simple? Reasonable? Fair. At least in theory. In reality, it felt like stepping onto a tightrope stretched across a canyon. One wrong move and everything could collapse. But for the first time since the party, I felt something close to peace. Not happiness, not relief, just a fragile sense of control. Like we'd finally drawn a line in the sand, instead of letting the tide keep washing over us. And honestly, it felt damn good for about 24 hours. Because life apparently enjoys plot twists. And just when I thought the storm had passed, just when I started convincing myself we could move forward and rebuild some kind of normal routine, my phone buzzed again. New email from her. I stared at the screen, stomach dropping like I'd just missed a step on the stairs. Every instinct in my body screamed, don't open it, ignore it, delete it, throw the phone into the ocean. But curiosity is a dangerous thing, so I tapped the notification. And the moment I started reading, I knew peace was officially canceled. Because this wasn't an apology, not even close. It was a full-blown attack, accusations, blame. Wild, unhinged theories that made my jaw drop and my blood pressure skyrocket. By the time I reached the end, my hands were shaking and my brain was buzzing with disbelief. Not sadness, not shock, just pure exhausted fury. Because apparently, in her version of reality, the problem wasn't her behavior. The problem was me, always me. And now she wanted proof, scientific proof, that my children belonged to her son. Yeah, you heard that right. A paternity test. At that point, I actually laughed, not a happy laugh. More like the hysterical cackle of someone who just realized the circus isn't leaving town anytime soon. Because if she wanted drama, oh honey, she was about to get the deluxe package. No refunds. You ever have one of those moments where life gets so ridiculous that your brain just checks out and starts running on sarcasm alone? Yeah, that was me the morning we scheduled the paternity test. Because apparently, my life had escalated from suburban mom chaos to full-on daytime talk show material, minus the dramatic stage lighting and the guy yelling, "You are the father," while the audience loses their collective minds. Honestly, missed opportunity. If we're going to do nonsense, we might as well do it with flair. But no. Instead, I found myself sitting in a sterile little clinic that smelled like disinfectant and regret, holding my baby girl on my hip, while my son swung his legs against the chair, like he was waiting for a dentist appointment. Totally normal day. Just casually proving the legitimacy of my children, like I'm submitting evidence in a courtroom. Motherhood. So glamorous. I kept looking around the waiting room, half expecting someone to recognize me and whisper, "Oh look, there's the woman whose mother-in-law thinks she's running a secret affair empire." Because that's how paranoia works. Your brain turns into a conspiracy theorist with Wi-Fi and zero chill. And the whole time, this running commentary in my head would not shut up. Wow. Look at you, living your best life, getting your kid's DNA tested because grandma watched too many soap operas and lost her grip on reality. Gold star parenting moment. I almost laughed out loud right there in the waiting room. Not because it was funny, but because the absurdity of the situation had reached peak clown territory. Like we had officially crossed the line from drama into satire. Meanwhile, my husband sat beside me looking calm on the outside, but I know him. I know that tight jaw, that quiet stillness. That's his version of anger. The controlled kind, the dangerous kind. The kind that doesn't explode, it simmers. And I felt this weird mix of pride and heartbreak watching him, because here he was humoring this insane demand. Not because he doubted me, not for 1 second, but because he was done playing games. Done letting her throw accusations into the wind and pretend they were facts. Done being the bigger person while she acted like a professional victim. This test wasn't about proving anything to us. It was about ending the circus. And honestly, I was all in. Petty? Maybe. Satisfying? Absolutely. The nurse called our names, and we walked into the little exam room, like we were about to participate in the world's lamest science experiment. Swab the cheek, label the sample, sign the paperwork, boom, done, 5 minutes. That's all it took. 5 minutes to collect proof that should never have been necessary in the first place. And yet somehow those 5 minutes carried the emotional weight of 5 years. Because the entire time, my brain kept circling back to the same thought. How did we get here? Not in a dramatic existential crisis kind of way. More like a tired, baffled, what the hell is my life kind of way. Like you look around and realize the script changed without your permission. 1 minute you're planning birthday parties and arguing about bedtime routines. Next minute you're proving your children's parentage like you're on trial. Life really said plot twist and hit the gas. After the appointment, we drove home in silence. Not awkward silence, just heavy silence. The kind where both people are thinking the same thing, but neither one wants to say it out loud because it might make the situation feel more real. So instead we focused on normal stuff, traffic, lunch, whether we had enough milk in the fridge, domestic nonsense. Because sometimes pretending everything is normal is the only way to stay sane. And for a few days, that's exactly what we did. We waited. And waiting is the worst part. Not the drama, not the confrontation, Not even the anger, the waiting. Because your mind starts wandering into dark corners, starts inventing scenarios, starts playing worst-case scenario roulette. What if the results get delayed? What if she claims their fate? What if this never ends? That last one stuck with me. Because deep down, I knew this wasn't really about DNA. It was about control, about pride, about a woman who couldn't admit she was wrong, even when the evidence was staring her in the face. And that realization hit me like a brick to the chest, because you can't reason with someone who's more invested in being right than being fair. That's a losing game. So instead of obsessing over the results, I threw myself into routine. Laundry, grocery shopping, packing school lunches, the endless hamster wheel of motherhood that never stops spinning, no matter how chaotic life gets. Honestly, routine saved me. There's something comforting about folding tiny socks and wiping peanut butter off countertops while your world is falling apart. It grounds you, reminds you that life keeps moving even when your emotions feel stuck. But every time my phone buzzed, my stomach dropped. Every notification felt like a tiny electric shock. Is it the results? Is it her? Is it more drama? I hated that feeling, hated the way anxiety crawled under my skin and refused to leave. So I coped the only way I know how, sarcasm. Lots of sarcasm. Like when my friend asked how I was doing, and I said, oh, just proving my kids belong to my husband. Living the dream. She laughed. I laughed. Because if you don't laugh, you cry. And I was fresh out of tears. Then finally, one random afternoon, while I was standing in the kitchen, trying to open a jar of pasta sauce like it personally offended me, my phone buzzed again. Unknown number. My heart immediately started sprinting. I wiped my hands on a dish towel, took a deep breath, and answered. Short call. Professional tone. Results ready. That was it. And suddenly the room felt too small, too quiet, too heavy. I hung up and just stood there for a second, staring at the wall like it might offer emotional guidance. Spoiler alert, it didn't. Walls are notoriously unhelpful in times of crisis. So I called my husband, told him the news, and the rest of the day moved in slow motion. Work ended early, kids picked up from school, dinner reheated but barely eaten. Every movement felt mechanical, like we were going through the motions, while our brains focused on the same looming moment, opening that envelope. Because even though I knew with absolute certainty what the results would say, there was still this tiny knot of tension sitting in my chest. Not doubt, never doubt, just anticipation, like waiting for the final score of a game you already know you won. Eventually, after the kids were asleep and the house settled into that familiar nighttime hush, we sat down at the dining table with the envelope between us. Plain, white, unassuming. The most dramatic piece of paper in my entire life. I stared at it for a long second, my brain running commentary like a sports announcer. Here we go. Moment of truth. Cue the suspense music. Somebody passed the popcorn. He opened it, slowly, carefully, and as his eyes scanned the page, I watched his face like it held the secrets of the universe. Then he exhaled, a long, steady breath, and handed me the paper. I read the words. Clear, simple, undeniable. Confirmed biological father, both children. 100%. Boom. Mic drop. Case closed. And the relief that washed over me in that moment was so intense it almost made me dizzy. Not because I doubted the outcome, but because the tension that had been building inside me finally snapped, like a rubber band stretched too tight. I laughed. Not hysterically. Not dramatically. Just a quiet, exhausted laugh that bubbled up from somewhere deep in my chest. Because after everything, the accusations, the drama, the emotional roller coaster, it was over. We had proof. Cold, hard, scientific proof. And now she had nowhere left to hide. So we did the logical thing. We scanned the results, attached the file, hit send, no dramatic message, no insults, no gloating, just facts. Because sometimes the most powerful response is silence, backed by evidence. And then we waited again. But this time, the waiting felt different, lighter, cleaner, like the storm had finally passed and we were standing in the aftermath, surveying the damage but no longer bracing for impact. Hours went by, no reply. Night fell, still nothing. And honestly, that silence spoke louder than any words ever could, because deep down I knew exactly what it meant. She had lost. Not the argument, not the power struggle, the illusion. The illusion that she could control the narrative. The illusion that she could bully us into submission. The illusion that she was always right. And losing that illusion? That's a brutal kind of defeat. The kind that leaves people scrambling for excuses, or digging themselves deeper into denial. Either way, I knew this wasn't the end. Not yet. Because people like her don't accept reality gracefully. They fight it. They twist it. They rewrite it. And sure enough, a couple days later, my phone buzzed again. Another email from her. I stared at the notification for a long second, feeling that familiar knot of tension tighten in my chest. Part of me wanted to ignore it, delete it, pretend it didn't exist. But curiosity is stubborn, and so am I. So I opened the message. And the moment I started reading, my jaw dropped. Because instead of apologizing, instead of admitting she was wrong, instead of showing even a shred of accountability, she doubled down, claimed the results were manipulated, said we must have pulled strings, accused me again of orchestrating the entire thing. At that point, I just leaned back in my chair and stared at the ceiling, completely speechless. Not angry, not shocked, just amazed. Because the level of delusion required to reject scientific evidence is honestly impressive, like Olympic-level mental gymnastics. Gold medal in denial. And that's when it finally hit me. This wasn't about truth. It never was. It was about pride. And pride is a stubborn, ugly beast. It will burn your entire life down before it admits defeat. So I closed my phone, set it on the table, and took a slow, steady breath. No rage, no panic, no tears, just clarity. Crystal clear, undeniable clarity. Because in that moment, I realized something that changed everything. We weren't dealing with a misunderstanding. We weren't dealing with hurt feelings. We weren't even dealing with family conflict anymore. We were dealing with someone who would rather live in fantasy than face reality. And you can't fix that. You can't argue with it. You can't reason with it. all you can do is walk away. And for the first time since this whole mess started, the idea of walking away didn't feel scary. It felt freeing, like dropping a weight you didn't realize you were carrying, like stepping out of a storm into clear, open air, like finally choosing peace over chaos. And oh man, peace suddenly sounded real damn good. So after she called the results fake, because of course she did, because reality apparently needs her permission to exist, the whole situation went quiet. Not calm quiet, not resolved quiet, more like the eerie silence after a toddler finally falls asleep. And you know something suspicious is about to happen. The kind where you sit on the couch holding your breath because peace feels temporary, like a glitch in the system. And I should have known. I really should have known. Because when someone spends decades building their personality around being right, they don't just wake up one day and go, you know what, maybe I was wrong. That requires humility, self-awareness, emotional maturity, 3 things she treats like expired milk. So yeah, the silence didn't last. It never does. The next curveball landed on a random Tuesday morning while I was standing in the kitchen in yesterday's leggings, trying to make coffee with one hand and keep my daughter from licking the dog with the other. Motherhood multitasking, Olympic level chaos, no medals, just caffeine dependency and emotional damage. My phone buzzed. New email. Her name lit up on the screen like a jump scare in a horror movie, and I just stared at it. Didn't open it right away. Didn't breathe right away either, now that I think about it. Because at that point, every message from her felt like opening a mystery box labeled emotional nonsense, handle with caution. I took a slow sip of coffee, burned my tongue immediately, because of course I did. Karma never misses, and then tapped the notification. And I swear to God, the first sentence made my eye twitch. Not anger. Not shock, just that deep, bone-tired irritation you feel when someone refuses to let a dead argument stay buried, like a zombie, but instead of brains, it feeds on attention. She said she was coming over, not asking, not suggesting, coming. That word sat there on the screen like a threat, and my brain instantly started spiraling. Oh, absolutely not. Ma'am, this is not a drive-thru. You do not just roll up, uninvited, after accusing me of fraud like you're dropping off cookies. We are not doing surprise visits in the middle of emotional warfare. I felt this hot wave of adrenaline hit my chest, the kind that makes your hands shake, and your thoughts speed up like you just chugged 3 energy drinks back to back. Because here's the thing, drama over text is one thing. Drama in person, that's a whole different level of chaos. And the idea of her standing on my porch, after everything, made my skin crawl. Not because I was scared, not because I felt guilty, because I was done. Done in that quiet, irreversible way. The kind of done where your patience doesn't snap anymore. It just disappears, like it packed a suitcase, and moved to another country without leaving a forwarding address. So I showed the email to my husband, watched his face tighten. That same steady, controlled anger settling into his shoulders again. Not explosive, not dramatic, just firm, final. And right there in that moment, something clicked between us. No big speech, no emotional monologue, just this silent agreement that the line had already been drawn and nobody was crossing it. We told her not to come. Simple, clear, direct. Which apparently translated in her brain to challenge accepted. Because a few hours later, another message popped up. She said she wouldn't show up, but she still didn't believe the results. Still convinced we manipulated everything. Still clinging to her version of reality like it was the last life, raft on a sinking ship. And that's when something strange happened. I didn't get angry, didn't feel hurt, didn't even feel surprised. I just felt tired. Not physically tired, although let's be honest, I live in a permanent state of exhaustion thanks to small humans who think bedtime is a suggestion, but emotionally tired, the deep kind. The kind that settles into your bones after too many battles. Because fighting someone who refuses to listen is like yelling at a brick wall. You waste energy, you lose your voice, and the wall stays exactly the same. So instead of spiraling, instead of crafting some long, fiery response, I just put my phone down and went back to making lunch. Peanut butter sandwiches, apple slices, juice boxes. The most aggressively normal meal in the middle of absolute insanity. And that's when it hit me. Life was still moving. Kids still needed food. Laundry still needed folding. The dog still needed to go outside before he turned the living room into a biohazard. The world didn't stop just because one person decided to live in denial, which is both comforting and wildly unfair. Because part of me wanted fireworks, closure, some dramatic final scene where she realized she was wrong and apologized, and everyone hugged it out like the end of a Hallmark movie. But real life doesn't do neat endings. Real life does awkward silence, distance, unanswered calls, blocked numbers, and honestly, that's exactly what happened. Days turned into weeks. Weeks turned into this weird, steady rhythm of normal life without her in it. No surprise visits, no passive-aggressive comments, no tension hanging in the air like humidity before a storm, just quiet. And at first, the quiet felt suspicious, like a trap. I kept waiting for the next explosion, the next accusation, the next wave of chaos, but it never came. Instead, mornings stayed peaceful, evenings stayed calm, birthdays came and went without drama. And the strangest part, the kids didn't ask about her, not once. They kept playing, laughing, fighting over toys, living their little kid lives without carrying the weight of adult nonsense. And watching them exist in that bubble of normalcy, felt like someone finally turned down the volume on the constant noise in my head. Because for so long, everything had felt loud, tense, heavy, like walking around with a thunderstorm strapped to your back. And now it felt like stepping outside after the rain stopped. Not sunshine, not rainbows, just clear air, breathable, manageable. One night, a few months later, I found myself standing in the kitchen, again, because apparently all major life realizations happen next to the refrigerator, watching my husband help our son build some ridiculously complicated toy that came with 17 instruction pages and a warning, label about choking hazards. My daughter was waddling around in footy pajamas, clutching a stuffed animal like it was the most important object in the universe. The house smelled like spaghetti. The TV hummed softly in the background. Ordinary, boring, beautiful.